Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, member of the House Intel Committee. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Ainsley.
Good morning. So here's the problem that the DOJ and the FBI have. They had access to Trump's Mar-A-Lago on June 3rd. Then they said put a padlock on that room so that no one else can see this information. Everyone thought, or he thought, and his staff thought they're in the clear. What happened between, and then they go to this Obama donor magistrate judge. They go to extreme measures to go into Mar-A-Lago in the cover of the night at 6:30 in the morning on Monday. What happened between June 3rd and the beginning of this week on Monday?
Well, I will tell you, Ainsley, House Republicans are going to follow the facts and demand accountability and transparency. The statement by Attorney General Merrick Garland is not nearly enough. The American people deserve to know all aspects and all details. And let's take a step back. This is Joe Biden's Department of Justice and FBI targeting his most likely presidential opponent in 2024. It is not news to the American people that President Trump is very likely to run for president. This was incredibly an overreach. It's un-American. And there's going to be a lot more questions from the FBI that the American people deserve. And I will tell you, this is systemic. This is the same agency that perpetuated the Russia hoax for years, that tried to undermine this administration. And this is just blatant politicization. And it should concern every American. I will tell you, my constituents are deeply, deeply concerned about the politicization of the FBI and Biden's DOJ.
Well, of course, the FBI director was appointed by Donald Trump, the former president. But, Congresswoman, if, you know, and they're just allegations, and we just have a little taste of the story from the New York Times and the Washington Post. They say, as Peter talked a moment ago, that apparently there was a national security concern about some of the documents allegedly at Mar-A-Lago, that they were materials from, they were higher than top secret. They were classified higher than that. As you know, they're called special access programs, and apparently they're related to nuclear weapons. We don't know if there are weapons. We don't know if they're another country's weapons. But if that is true, and they were just in the basement at Mar-A-Lago, that's kind of a big deal.
Well, certainly, Steve, there's been a lot of, again, guesses as to, and media reporting. We do not know the facts, which is why it's important to follow the facts wherever they lead. And that's why it's important in our oversight role on the House Intelligence Committee. We continue to see the FBI refuse to answer questions when they create controversies and they overreach. And that should never be the case. Congress has oversight over these agencies. We will ask those tough questions. But what I've found with Director Wray, even related to FBI controversies in my district, which led to the loss of life in a very deadly limousine crash, they are refusing to respond to basic congressional outreach. That is not okay. These agencies are paid for by hardworking taxpayer dollars. And if you can do this to a former president of the United States, every American is fearful. But of course, we will always protect national security and classified information. That is important. But the president has said, and it's important to note, Steve, that the president, when he was the sitting president, he has the right to declassify any information. So there's going to be a lot more information here that comes out when we focus on the facts.
Well, I will say that they are extremely confident that Merrick Garland and company are way over their skis on this, and they politicized it, and they were willing to cooperate, and they proved it again, saying, hey, at 3 o'clock, open up the warrant, open up the itinerary. And if you wonder why Donald Trump's distrustful, think about Clapper, think about Kleinsmith, think about Strzok, think about Page, think about McCabe, think about Comey, think about Jim Baker. They've all been disgraced and basically going after him. So if you look at the other big news today, and it normally would be bigger than life news, is the biggest climate change bill in the history of our nation is going to be jammed down our throats on a simply party line ballot. It's called the Inflation Reduction Act, but there is no proof that it does anything to inflation. Is there anything that you guys in the House can do to stop it? Any Democrats thinking about defecting?
Well, we are going to adamantly oppose this legislation. You are exactly right, Brian. It does nothing to reduce inflation. In fact, it's going to expand inflation. It should be called the Inflation Expansion Act. There is more focus on Green New Deal than any other issue in the bill. Over $350 billion spent on Green New Deal additions. What is most concerning to me is the 87,000 IRS agents. And let me tell you, those agents aren't helping the American people get their tax refunds. They are focused on, again, increasing increasing their overreach. And constituents in my district, the vast majority of the audits are for those under $70,000 for a household income. That is a significant expansion of government. That is exactly what we do not need right now. We need to absolutely stop the spending, and we are going to hold Democrats accountable this November. Democrats who voted for the $1 trillion of spending and are now voting when we're facing 40-year high inflation. They're voting for this Inflation Expansion Act that is trying to hide the Green New Deal priorities that are so out of touch with the American people, and it's going to make gas prices go up just when the American people cannot afford that.
If Republicans take over in November, would y'all be able to reverse what's happening with the IRS?
Well, we are going to do everything we can to reverse it. Absolutely, having oversight, reducing the absolute growth. The numbers that we're talking about here, Ainsley, that would make the IRS bigger than the staffs of the Pentagon, the FBI, the Border Patrol, and State Department combined. It is an army of IRS agents. It is bloated government at its worst. And this is at the same time as we're talking about FBI's politicization and overreach. It is un-American. It's not the direction that the vast majority of the American people want to be seeing in this country.
$85 billion is being added to the budget. They are in the 1960s technologically wise, and they're only putting $5 billion towards moving us, moving the technology forward. $5 billion. Instead, they're just going to give a bunch of people who 97% are unionized and vote Democrat, they're going to give them huge salaries to go out and harass the American people. It is incredible that Joe Manchin signed off on this.
Well, we will adamantly oppose it, and the American people need to hold Democrats accountable this November. Pelosi is going to force her moderate members to vote yes. House Republicans will be unified in opposition, and we will continue to make sure the American people know what Democrats are trying to hide in these big legislative bloated packages.
All right, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, we thank you very much for telling us how you're going to vote later on today. Thank you very much.
Elise, it's my sister's name.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.